Hello. Yeah, sound is coming, right? If anyone is watching live, let me know in the comment section on the right hand side. We are going to do a decolonial scholarship again. Hey Pramod, hi. Thanks for your support. We are going to discuss decoloniality again and its relevance for Hindus in India. And again, a disclaimer that I'm not an expert in sociology nor an expert in decoloniality. I'm just taking a learner's approach. I'm learning along with you all. It's a group study session, basically. And we are going to study the book, The Darker Side of Modernity, by the great decolonial scholar Walter D. Mignolo, and seeing how it applies to the Indian perspectives, to Indic perspectives, to the dharmic perspectives, and seeing how, according to me, decoloniality in India essentially is dharmic civilizational awakening and Hindutva, and we'll get to see what are the points he discusses. Yeah, I'm actually live. Okay. Let me just post this live stream's link on Instagram because a lot of people join me from Instagram. So just hold on. Ajit Bharti has just posted about Kantara. What a movie. Okay. Just posting on Instagram so that more people can join. Oh, you were watching Ajit Bharti's review. How was it? And remember one thing about what Pratik Borade said, who is my favorite movie reviewer on YouTube. He was reminding us that indirectly he was basically saying, because he is probably not aware of this term called decoloniality, that how much of an exercise in decoloniality this movie Kantara is. Because what have we always seen when villages of India are depicted? It's always starts with patriarchy and oppression of women and ends there. Here they are showing none of that. They are not applying those lenses of gender, someone oppressing the other. It's not that the men are really great and perfect, nor is it that men are the absolute villains and oppressing women like monsters all the time. In fact, when the hero basically Eve teases, although it's 1990s, and I'm not saying that 1990s was a great fun time so for Eve teasers and they should have done that, but it is depicted as a wrong thing, because every time he does something wrong, he gets those nightmares from that deva. So that's how you solve your own epistemes, own culture's problems, while using your own epistemical lenses instead of using colonial and Marxist solutions, which are meant for Marxist and Abrahamic problems. Kantara is basically exactly what decoloniality is all about. It's the movie version. It's a workshop in decoloniality, cinematic decoloniality. There's so much research to be done as cinematic influence, decolonial influences in cinema or something like that. Because since so many, Sai Deepak has inspired so many people, all these kids, first year and second year students in DU, who are big fans of Sai Deepak. Imagine when they start writing papers and when they become full-fledged academics and professors 10, 15, 20 years from now. Imagine the changes that are going to happen. Almost done. Okay. We ended last day abruptly because my electricity went off. But we ended at a great spot. I've kept that paragraph highlighted in the PDF and just see what it said. It was absolutely incredible and eye-opening. So let's share the screen. Okay, see this place. We scholars and decolonial thinkers can contribute not by telling indigenous scholars, intellectuals, and leaders what the problem is. See how decoloniality here makes a stark distinction between Western intellectuals, even Indian Marxist intellectuals who use post-colonial lenses, Marxist lenses to solve India's problems. They are saying, we are not going to tell you what your problem is. We are not even going to give you the solutions. But we are going to give you a framework, a tool to observe your problems and solve it on your own. Since they know it better than we do, and definitely better than Al Gore does for that matter. But by acting in the hegemonic domain of scholarship, wherein the idea of nature as something outside human beings has been consolidated and persists, this is exactly what Kantara addresses apparently. Decolonizing knowledge consists precisely in this type of research. The next step would be to build decolonial options on the ruins of imperial knowledge. But we are still very much stuck in imperial knowledge, of course, in India. Two examples come to mind. First, when in 1590, the Jesuit father Jose de Acosta published Historia Naturali Moral de la Indias, nature was, in Christian European cosmology, something to know. Understanding nature was tantamount to understanding its creator, God. But the Aymaras and Quechuas had no such metaphysics. Consequently, there was no concept comparable to the Western concept of nature. Instead, they relied on Pachamama, a concept that Western Christians did not have. Pachamama was how Quechuan and Aymaran, Amauta and Yatiris. Amautas and Yatiris were the silenced intellectual equivalents of theologian Acosta. How they understood the human relationship with life, with that energy that engenders and maintains life, today translated as Mother Earth. The phenomenon that Western Christians described as nature existed in contradistinction to culture. The phenomenon that Western Christians described as nature existed in contradistinction to culture. So according to Western Christians, nature and culture are two separate things. Furthermore, it was conceived as something outside the human subject, which is why even they have come up with the idea of humanism, which basically means anthropocentrism, and humans at the top of the food chain, and we analyze everything else from that lens, that everything is here for humans. Nothing is here to survive with humans. Everyone here is, every animal, every land, every nature, every tree is here to serve human beings. That's the Abrahamic idea. The phenomenon that Western Christians describe as nature existed in contradistinction to culture. Furthermore, it was conceived as something outside the human subject. For Aymaras and Quechuas, more than human phenomena, basically superhuman, as well as human beings, were conceived as Pachamama. And in this conception, there was not, and there is not today, a distinction between nature and culture. See how much Kantara is a decolonial movie. It's a movie entirely dependent on decolonial ethos, even without knowing it. Why doesn't Rishabh Shetty need to know about decoloniality for making a movie which is basically decolonial in nature? Because he is already steeped and soaked in that culture. He is basically what decolonial scholars would call upon to say that hey, you should make a movie using decolonial options, and he's already doing that. This seems like the review of Kantara, doesn't it? No distinction between nature and culture in pre-Abrahamic societies, especially societies that exalted nature, polytheistic societies. Aymaras and Quechuas saw themselves in it, not separated from it. As such, culture was nature and nature was and is culture for them. Thus, the initial moment of the colonial revolution was to implant the Western concept of nature and to rule out the Aymara and Quechua concept of Pachamama, which is why they have social sciences and natural sciences separately. Which is why they discard every Indic scientist or scientific work as philosophy and every Indian piece of history as mythology. Aymaras and Quechuas saw themselves in it. Thus, the initial Western concept of nature and to rule out the Aymara and Quechua concept of Pachamama. This was basically how colonialism was introduced into the domain of knowledge and subjectivity. 20 years after Acosta, Sir Francis Bacon published his Novum Organum in 1620, in which he proposed a reorganization of knowledge and clearly stated that nature was there to be dominated by man. So they are looking at nature as an object. This is exactly what objectification means. They are seeing, there is something separate called nature and there is something called not nature, and it is there, it exists. That particular thing called nature exists. Whereas pre-Abrahamic cultures, even including us, saw ourselves as part of nature, therefore we are nature, dominated by man. During this period, before the Industrial Revolution, Western Christians asserted their control over knowledge about nature by disqualifying all coexisting and equally valid concepts of knowledge, and by ignoring concepts that contradicted their own understanding of nature. Everything is superstition. Let's highlight this part. Okay. What did they do? They asserted their knowledge. About nature. And how did they do it? By disqualifying all coexisting. This is an important word here. By disqualifying all coexisting and equally valid. They were equally valid concepts of knowledge. And by ignoring concepts which were not theirs, which contradicted their own understanding of nature. At the same time, they engaged in an economy of brutal resource extraction, gold and silver and other metals, for a new type of global market. They also undertook a macroeconomy of plantation, harvest and regeneration, that is sugar, tobacco, cotton, etc., and did so without transgenic incentives, which engrossed the banks of Manchester, Liverpool and London, such that taking loans from Genoa bankers, as was the norm in Spain in the first half of the 16th century, was unnecessary. Second, once nature became an established concept, this separate particular object thing called nature, once that became an established concept, once everyone agreed with that and everyone bowed down in front of that idea that okay, there is something called nature, the relation of man to nature displaced the European medieval concept of labor as well as other ideas and uses of labor. In Tawantinsuyu, to which Guaman Poma de Ayala devoted the last 40 or so drawings of his Nueva Crónica y Buen Gobierno in 1616. Working to live, or living labor in Marx's conceptualization, began to mutate into enslaved and then waged labor. Similar cases can be found beyond the history of Europe and its colonies, in the Islamic world and in China. All these cases worldwide had two features in common. What are the two features? Labor was necessary to live and was not engulfed in the colonial matrix of power that transformed and was not engulfed in the colonial matrix of power that transformed living labor into slavery, and waged labor, that is enslaved and waged labor, became naturalized in the process of creating an economy of accumulation that is today recognized as capitalist economic mentality. Labor was necessary to live and was not engulfed in the colonial matrix of power that transformed living labor into slavery, and also waged labor. Before this, living was the necessary precondition to work. This transformation resulted in extensive enslaved trade that transformed human life into a commodity for the owner of the plantation, of the mine, and later on of the industry. The next step was the Industrial Revolution. The meaning of nature in Acosta and Bacon changed, coming to refer to natural resources which were meant to be exploited, because it's called resources for a reason. It's a resource for using up in some other action. Hence, it has the name resource. Coming to refer to natural resources, the food necessary to nourish the machines of the Industrial Revolution that produced other machines, railroad and automobile, that required more food, charcoal and oil. Environmental catastrophe started at this moment. While regeneration of life before the Industrial Revolution still sustained a friendly relation between the Western man of culture and the integration of labor and nature on which he built his culture, the distance grew after the Industrial Revolution. This is a beautiful sentence. While regeneration of life before the Industrial Revolution still sustained a friendly relation between the Western man of culture and the integration of labor and nature on which he built his culture, the distance grew after the Industrial Revolution, and all other civilizations were relegated in the eyes of Western men increasingly to the past. Why is this phrase past important here? Anything before Industrial Revolution now becomes past, because after Industrial Revolution starts the modern era, where modern doesn't just become a new thing or a different thing. Now modern starts becoming the better thing for no fucking reason. It's new, therefore it's good. Nature, broadly conceived, mutated into natural resources, while nature as a concrete noun that names the physical non-human world became in the new world the basis for cultivation of sugar, tobacco, cotton and so forth. That's nature. Nature means sugar, tobacco, cotton cultivate karte phiro. In other words, the concept mutated into one referring to the source of natural resources, charcoal, oil, gas, that fueled the machines of the Industrial Revolution. That is, nature became a repository of objectified, neutralized, and largely inert materiality that existed for the fulfillment of the economic goals of the masters of the materials. Okay, I'll take a little break and we have another 10 minutes to go. I'll just check out some of the comments. And remember, my UPI ID is given in the description box. So if anyone wants to contribute to my efforts here, they can contribute to it. It's called Nirajan Shah 83 at OK HDFC Bank. Let's see the comments. Pramod, same point was taken. Kritika is here. Hi Kritika. Very fascinating. Kantara is amazing. Yes. Shubharna Paul, you're promoting a good book. Kudos. Shubharna Paul. Okay. Bengali guy knows Decoloniality. Nice. Have you read this, Shubharna? Okay, I don't know if you're older than me, so I'm sorry. Shubharna Babu, have you read this book prior to this? Hope you have. Then you can give us some enlightening comments as well. Okay, let's get on with it. Yeah. So, nature becomes, after Industrial Revolution, becomes a repository of objectified, neutralized, and largely inert materiality that existed for the fulfillment of the economic goals of the masters of those materials. The legacy of this transformation lives today in our assumption that nature is the provider of natural resources for daily survival. That's all nature is, nothing else. The legacy of this transformation lives today. Nature is the provider of natural resources for daily survival. Water as a bottled commodity. For example, water as a bottled commodity. The mutation of nature into natural resources in the West was a sign of progress and modernization, and at the same time, a sign that other civilizations stagnated and were falling behind the West. Such images were pure and simple narrative constructions. Therefore, I think these words should have been in quotes, but I'll underline them so that I remember that they are supposed to be in quotes. Because now that narrative starts, okay, that we have to catch up to the West, we are uneducated, we are lagging behind, we are the third world, they are the first world. These concepts, now they take birth. Mutation of nature into natural resources. How nature became natural resources in the West, that was the sign of progress. That was the beginning of their idea of progress and modernization. And at the same time, a sign that these other civilizations were stagnated. Hilarious. Now all of a sudden we are stagnated and we are falling behind the West. Of course, I'm not saying that let's not do all these things, let's not industrialize. That's always a disclaimer I have to give whenever I'm discussing decoloniality. Otherwise, people like Kushal, Mehra and Prakhar Gupta will say that, okay, these are communists. That's not what we are saying. I'm totally for playing by the rules as long as you are playing by other people's rules and we are not winners. The moment you gain some traction inside the game, then you can change the rules. That's the difference between decolonial scholars and blind Marxists who say, no, capitalism is bad. Nature ka kharab ho raha hai. Now stop all industries. Let the country go to hell like Cuba. That's not what we are saying. We are saying become the winners in this game, then change the rules. Such images were pure and simple narrative constructions. This is a hilarious sentence. That is, they were assumed to be realities. Oh, what a beautiful sentence. Scathing. They were assumed to be realities represented in the domain of knowledge, and knowledge was the basic and powerful tool used both to control authority and to be transferred as a commodity. Knowledge becomes also a commodity, and also to control authority. By authority, I guess it could be interpreted as how to get the native elites, and so that you get to control those authorities and then you can control the rest of the country and culture. Knowledge in the colonial matrix of power was a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it was okay, I think this paragraph was there in Sai Deepak's book India That Is Bharat. This sentence seems very familiar because I've read that book about 3 times. So I kind of remember this sentence. Knowledge in the colonial matrix of power was a double-edged sword. Knowledge, the thing we think is universal, that there can be only one kind of knowledge. On the one hand, it was a mediation to the ontology of the world as well as a way of being in the world, subjectivity. On the other hand, as far as knowledge was conceived imperially as true knowledge, it became a commodity to be exported to those whose knowledge was deviant or non-modern according to Christian theology, and later on, secular philosophy and sciences. What a great analysis. Look at this. I have to underline this entirely, unfortunately. On the other hand, as far as knowledge was conceived imperially as true knowledge, that is their knowledge which they conceived as true knowledge, that became the commodity to be exported to those whose knowledge was deviant. Not to those who didn't have knowledge or lack knowledge, but to those people who didn't have this Christian Western concept of knowledge. This knowledge was now, this true knowledge was to be exported to them. As I've always said, the basic nature of coloniality, and Abrahamic faiths and Marxism is that first they create the problem, then they sell you the solution. Now this is another example of that. That true knowledge becomes a commodity to be exported to those whose knowledge was deviant and or non-modern according to Christian theology, and also later on secular philosophy and sciences. This combination was successful enough in terms of the amassing of wealth and power that by the end of the 19th century, China and India had to confront the fact, the great civilizations of the past. They had to confront the fact that Western men and institutions saw them as, that is, built knowledge in such a way that they came to be regarded as lagging behind historically. And history for the West was equal to modernity. Consequently, Western knowledge became a commodity of exportation for the modernization of the non-Western world. This is where we'll have to stop because it's a nice end to a nice paragraph. Western knowledge became a commodity of exportation for the modernization of the non-Western world. This is the problem with modernity, which is the basic theme of the book. Okay, let's see if there's any more comments that we need to get to. We'll get to more live streams again tomorrow or maybe day after. Bhai, are you gonna do a Q&A session after 1k subs? Yeah, I want to. But the problem is, since I'm a music producer by profession, I don't have any fixed schedule. I get randomly contacted by a client that we need this music piece tomorrow or tomorrow morning or in 2 hours. So I can never promise a live stream fixed in a fixed way. That's why I am doing these absolutely randomly whenever I get time. And let's say tomorrow I say that I'll do a live stream at 2 p.m. Maybe at 1 p.m. I'll get a client who calls me up and says I need a song or music work by 5 p.m. That's how it goes. But I'll do a live stream sometime or the other, regardless of whether it's pre-announced or not. Let's see, preferably at a time when most people are awake. The problem is I wake up at late evening and I go to sleep in the morning. So that's why I haven't been able to interview too many people. Okay, let's end this video here. And remember, if you want to support my actions here, support my efforts here, my UPI ID is given in the description box. It's called nirajanshaha83 at OK HDFC Bank. Thank you. Goodbye.